Hello and welcome along to the Tackling Sport podcast. It's Daniel Hussey, your host, joined alongside me by my brother Sean. Sean, how's it going?
All good.
So look, slightly later this week, but we wanted to preview the Ireland versus Portugal game as well as probably arguably a bigger game away to Luxembourg. Sean, your initial thoughts in terms of Stephen Kenny? Like, I don't think his future is in threat too much, but I don't know. I have a funny feeling or a bad feeling about these couple of fixtures for some reason. If the Portugal game doesn't go to plan, that Luxembourg game is huge all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's a weird one because like every international break that Stephen Kenny's had, he's come in under pressure. But I was thinking there, you know, I think the pressure has eased slightly, but I also think that it's probably the two games that mean the least. I think everyone everyone knows we're not going to qualify for the World Cup. That's a done deal. We know we've had a really poor campaign, but there is kind of the progression slightly coming in the last couple of camps. And I think if we lost both games, I don't think it would be disastrous. The key is probably how we lose those games if we do. So I do think the pressure will always be on Stephen Kenny as Ireland manager. I think that will just because of his, I suppose, in some people's eyes, lack of pedigree. The pressure will always be on him. But I do think these two games, they don't mean an awful lot. I still think, regardless of what happens over these two games, Stephen Kenny will be in charge for the Euro 2020 or Euro 24 campaign, which starts in the Nations League as well. So I think the pressure has eased slightly on him now. That, like I said, there'll always be pressure on him, but hopefully with these two games, I don't think they mean as much as maybe. And I think what is it, Thursday night is going to be a huge opportunity for these players to have a night, like the Euro 2016 team had, and to have a night at the Aviva where Ireland produce a massive performance. And I think the Kenny era maybe needs it as well. And that kind of landmark win, they always say it about managers, be it in the Premier League, be it in the Championship, and in any league, you need that kind of landmark win to not only announce yourself to the fans, but more importantly to the players and give them confidence. So hopefully on Thursday night, if we got a performance like we did in the Algarve that time, I think there'll be a lot to be looking forward to. And I also think the crowd at the Aviva are going to have a massive part to play in it. I was only thinking the other day of the whole Christian Eriksen thing when Ireland played Denmark. I can't imagine some of the songs that could be sung at Ronaldo or Fernandez. So hopefully Ireland the lads give them something to feed off for the crowd.
Yeah, like it's a great weekend because obviously the New Zealand game as well, and Jesus, it's like the good old times are back all of a sudden, just like that. 50k back to back in the Aviva over 2 nights. So yeah, I think that's a massive factor is that full Aviva Stadium because what happened a lot at the start of the Stephen Kenny era was these empty stadiums, COVID. The Premier League was tough to watch, let alone watching Ireland in empty stadiums and for a manager to try and implement a style without, I don't know, feeding off a crowd. Like obviously football without fans is nothing, but I think it particularly hindered Stephen Kenny just with that start. Forget about the COVID and the injuries and stuff like that. I just don't think playing in an empty Aviva Stadium, he never really had a platform to build on. Whereas if he started, say that Serbia game was, or those three fixtures were his first spell in charge or his first games, you definitely would have had a lot more goodwill from the wider public on Stephen Kenny. But I do think it's almost like night and day with these, comparing his era at the start, maybe that first year almost to where we are now. I just think there's a certain buzz that by the crowd, and I'm really looking forward to Thursday's game. Not really looking forward to Luxembourg game, given the pressure that might be on him. But I'm really looking forward to Thursday's game. Just the atmosphere, everything around the game, people giving out that everyone is there to watch Ronaldo. Just it's great stuff. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a weird one because people forget Mick McCarthy was going to see out the campaign, and if Ireland qualified for the Euros before the pandemic, he would have been in charge. And with everything, the kind of the whole succession plan and the fast tracking of Kenny in, it's just been a mad, what is it, 18 months since it was announced. But what I would say is, I think you're right. I think having the Aviva in the last couple of games, particularly that first game, I think was against Serbia, at the Aviva Stadium, where it was probably when I first felt the real push and the real energy that was behind Stephen Kenny, behind the manager. And he's someone who he's quite an interesting character. He's someone, there was a famous story, and I think when Ireland played one of it might have been Luxembourg at Aviva Stadium, he took off the then under-21 captain Jason Malumbi, and everyone was kind of interested as to why he came off. And while Malumbi was coming off, I think Kenny turned to the stand and kind of said, "How well did he play?" And he's all about that. And I think one of the games, I think it was that Serbia game, he kind of pointed at Gavin Bazuna to the fans and brought him over to the fans. And I think he feeds off that energy. And it's only now when the support has been behind him, whether it be the diehard, fans that maybe from the League of Ireland that have seen his work at, the various clubs, or maybe just the general match going Irish fans, they really want something to get behind. That there's no guarantee that if you play a pragmatic style in this day and age that you're going to beat teams. You look at how Denmark have improved in the last 5 or 6 years, Georgia on another side, and there's only so much you can improve really by playing that pragmatic style. So I think you're right with it. Does feel like the old days where the Aviva for the next couple of weekends, because you got you got the FAI Cup final then in a few weeks. So hopefully, look, I think if anything was to happen in the Aviva on Thursday night, it would be a bit of a miracle. But like I said, I think Stephen Kenny, the era just needs a night to kind of take off and have that feel good factor around the place and have that energy that he's been using. And if Ireland get the first goal, or we get to half time 0-0, and then I really think the fans will start to believe. And I think maybe if the fans believe, that might rub off to the players. But I think not only does Kenny need a big night, I think some of these Ireland players who haven't had that big night yet. You think of a lot of the young players, your players under the age of 22 or 23, or even if you look at a Josh Cullen, for example, or John Egan, that they mightn't have had their big nights yet for Ireland. Whereas if you look at maybe a Duffy or a Coleman, they kind of have that in the back, and you want someone to kind of step up and be a hero and be remembered in 10 or 15 years time. And make no mistake, look, if Ireland win, it means nothing. Ultimately, but I think it'll mean a lot to Kenny, and it might be a transformative moment. But it won't be a same night as Shane Long's goal. But I think if Ireland were to beat Portugal, with Ronaldo and with Fernandes and with Jota, and one of the hottest teams in Europe after being where we've been over the last 18 months, and one of the first times that we're going to have a full capacity, in Ireland, I think
Yeah.
it would be a lot more than just 3 points in a dead rubber game.
Yeah, but like you said, I think we kind of the Serbia goal almost signaled the arrival, as terrible a goal as that was. And there was the Stephen Kelly, and no matter how big a Stephen Kenny fan you are, I think Stephen Kelly was the most positive man in Ireland about that performance. But he nearly had me there. But I was going to say there's positives in that game, but that goal is just like, I know it's a lot of fans are appreciating. They'll give Stephen Kenny all day long, but they are no, and it's rightly so. You need results. You just need results, and a goal like that, the atmosphere. And I know there's always a good atmosphere in Ireland goal, but I know there's nothing on the line. But like you said, it will kind of signal the start of Stephen Kenny's era, which I think has already been signaled. But you said it's a big night, and a lot of those players, like you mentioned,
a lot of the players, but also the fact that the with lockdown and everything, and we haven't had full capacities in Ireland, and we've been behind other nations. Like you think to the summer with the Euros, and
we missed out. We're the only country that missed out, didn't we?
Yeah, with a lot of things. So it's been, and also like if you want to chart it back further, and you think of everything that's happened with the Delaney era, because that's all run through COVID as well. So it's been a kind of a really disappointing, and it does feel
just on that. So yeah, you're right. So it's the first full capacity stadium since the John Delaney days, isn't
it? Well,
is the last time it was
still there?
Ball, well, he's still there.
So it's like I think everyone has forgotten about that and forgotten about him swept him under the carpet. But I do think Irish football has been bashed at for a number of years, and there's been a lot of difficulties, and we know where the progression we've seen from Denmark, and we've seen Scotland progressing and England getting to a European final. And I think there's no guarantee that Ireland qualify for the next Euros, despite it being the easiest competition for us to qualify for. But I think a win against Portugal will just answer a lot of questions for Kenny, and he'll be, even a win. There's been a lot of kind of talk, even in the British media about Stephen Kenny, and people are looking at him going, how have Ireland still stuck with him? That they mightn't understand the full idea around Stephen Kenny. They don't know him. They know him as a League of Ireland manager, and I think that might just even hush, have a bit of hush from there, and it just relax everything. Now that being said, look, if Portugal go out and win 4-5-0, which could easily happen, I don't think anyone should jump to anything mad quick. But I do think these two games have the games that probably have had the least riding on it for Stephen Kenny. I think because the last couple of international breaks, even the friendly against Qatar, you're thinking, we've got to
It
win
has
this.
to
If
win,
we
yeah.
don't win this, even though I was at the Qatar game, they are one of the worst teams I've ever seen kick a football. So
That's encouraging to hear, anyway.
yeah, and like I was watching the game, going, whoever gets these in Group A in the next World Cup, whoever their number 9 is, I mean, they're going to clean up. Top goal scorer all the way.
And they're ranked like 30th or 40th, but anyway, it just shows you they're slightly misleading. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about around the game then, Sean. I think to give people a bit of a flavour for the preview, maybe not necessarily picking a lineup, but I guess I might just quickly run through the squad here and who are the key players for Ireland, because sometimes you forget lads that are in the squad and stuff like that. So you got Kelleher, Bazunu, and Travers. They kind of picked themselves as 3 goalkeepers. When we spoke about this in the podcast at length, that it's great to have those 3 young goalkeepers, and it's important. And I know you've made the point before, but it's important to reiterate on Mark Travers that he's having a good season at Bournemouth, and I think that's really important because it was just a bad moment for him, and it can happen to any goalkeeper, as you've seen with Alisson, at fault for all 3 goals for West Ham.
And
the West Ham
I
game
mean, it could have easily happened if it was Bazunu and Travers has come in. It's just,
well, it's happened for Bazunu at club level, in fairness,
So it's just a bit of case and luck, but he's someone, again, we could be looking at the prospect in easily next year or in the next couple of years when Kelleher, decides to move on or he gets a run at Liverpool. We could have 3 goalkeepers certainly in the Premier League, because I think Travers will be heading there next year.
And Bazunu could get that loan. Maybe that's 2 seasons away, a Premier League loan. I'm thinking Championship next season, but who knows? Especially if he's playing phenomenally for Ireland. The defenders, so you got Coleman, Doherty as the right backs. You got Ryan Manning, Ennis, Stevens. Interesting, James McLean was named as a defender, at least on my list here. It's not the official list. And then there's Shane Duffy, John Egan, Omar Bamadeli, and Nathan Collins. So you've got the 4 defenders, 4 centre backs, 3 left backs, and 2 right backs there. On those, obviously, it was great to see Omar Bamadeli get his centre back partner, get his start for Norwich, and obviously massive win. And then all of a sudden the manager gets sacked, and it's like he has to start again. But for him and Ida, potentially that could be a good opportunity as well.
No, you just don't know who Norwich are going to pick as a manager. There's a lot of names touted about, but if you're coming into a side, I don't think you're going to play the 19-year-old defender, are you? It would be a very brave decision.
If he man of the match against Portugal now.
Yeah, well, maybe. But it's an interesting one, that defence, because we've sat here and Stephen Kenny was renowned for his 4-3-3 at under 21 level, and that with Dundalk, and we spoke for a long time how this squad is shaped for 5 at the back. A lot of these players are playing, or have played in that shape before, and it's an interesting one to watch out for. Has been Ryan Manning, who has got in with the change of manager at Swansea. Russell Martin, the former MK Dons manager, is managing them, and he's playing as a left-sided centre back in a 3, and they play 5 at the back or 3 at the back. And he's someone who it's been a really weird transition, because he's you can play left in a 3 or a left wing back, and he kind of started his days as an attacking forward player. So it's interesting how he's modified his game, and I think he adds again another dimension. He's someone who maybe hasn't been fully given a chance with Ireland, because there's been Enda Stevens and James McLean. So there is quite a few options there now for Ireland to play 5 at the back. So it does feel like if Coleman comes in, Doherty came on off the bench at left wing back the other day for Spurs. So do you go with that 5 at the back, or do you drop Amadamabele and bring in Coleman? So there is options, and we spoke about this at the last international break, how the team is starting to pick itself more and more, and players are fitting into the system, and you've got, I would say, 8 or 9 guaranteed starters in the system we have. So there's positives for Kenny, and it'd be interesting to see what way he plays against Portugal, because I think no doubt we'll be playing 5 at the back. But it's just a case of what attacking players he gets up there, and does he maybe sacrifice an Adam Ida and have a 3 in midfield, and maybe Robinson and another up there. And if he does play Ida, it'll be interesting to see. But there's a couple of interesting dynamics specifically in the defence and in the midfield that we're starting to see a lot more players fit into the system.
Yeah, and like you said, he'll pick the back 5. It's the midfield and the balance between, do you pick the 3 midfielders and the 2 attackers, or vice versa. So going through those midfielders, like you mentioned, Conor Hearn, Josh Cullen, who's obviously been starting every game for Anderlecht, Jeff Hendrick, Jason Knight, Jason Malumbi, Alan Brown, Jamie McGrath, a lot of like decent players, like not like we're not talking top level here, but like, I don't know, looking at that, I'm excited by pretty much all those players. Like, I know Hearn and Hendrick have been around a while, but even Hendrick arguably his best performance since 2016 or 17 anyway, the last day. So exciting enough midfield in a certain extent. Here's me trying to be real positive, I know.
Well, here, like, it was the Qatar game, wasn't it, that Hendrick had a good performance. Now, I don't want to put a damn squid in it, but I reckon Johnny Giles could have gone into that midfield. I mean, Qatar were... I was in the upper tier, and you can kind of watch a lot more. I remember the first time I really noticed is when we went to the Camp Nou, Dan, and you're watching these players, and they're like ants almost. I was watching from the upper tier, and my God, Qatar were, I mean, hopeless. And when you get time and space, Jeff Hendrick played very well. It's going to be interesting. I think he's going to be a lot more industrial in the game against Portugal. He's going to have to work hard. I'd be interested to see. I think someone like Alan Brown might be suited to the game. I mean, he's a bit more energy in there, a lot more running. McGrath's had a couple of injury issues. Now he's in the squad. Whether he starts, I'm not sure. I think he could go with Brown in there. But yeah, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of decent players, but when you're coming up against that midfield of Portugal, or if you give the ball away there, I mean, if Ireland do try and play out from the back or try and play through midfield, I mean, if you give the ball away to Fernandez there, or Jota, or anyone really on the half turn of that quality, we're going to be up against it.
Yeah, Amadeli, first goal scored 70-1. Like Dara says, that's very. Who I backed in the United City game as first goal scorer? It was like 120-1, 130-1 on the exchange. It was Eric Bailly. So and he scored that own goal. And he still had a couple of. He was up for a free kick. He was just behind. He stayed back with Maguire's header. So anyway, I thought I got a good run for my money. Own goal finish aside. But yeah, 71. You get a cracking odds on those players, because realistically Ireland aren't going to score. So hence the massive odds there. And I suppose you probably get bigger on the exchange. But yeah, I would love to see a goal like that. Omid Amadeli scoring against Portugal. The forward, Sean, Callum Robinson, Troy Parrott, who's banging in the goals for NK Dons, albeit at League One level. Adam Ida, Will Keane, who spoke very well at the press conference today. And for those who haven't seen it, would probably better just to watch on Twitter if you can. Ogbene, Daryl Horgan, and Callum O'Dowda, who's come in to replace who actually went out just so
James Collins.
James Collins is injured, so those attacking players maybe not as exciting as midfield, but there's some good players there.
Now, Ogbene, he started against Qatar, didn't he? I don't know. I didn't think he was great that day. He played well. He's had a really good impact off the bench, and maybe he is a bit of an impact player. I think the omission of Conley is a very interesting one. I think it's right. I think he's at a stage in his career where, Brighton have been very good at the start of the season, and they have a lot of top players. And their system at the moment, he's not getting into it. We also have an issue with Michael Obafemi. Now, there's no guarantee on his international future anymore. But he was left out of a squad at Swansea. He's recently moved from Southampton to Swansea. He's been left out of a squad for disciplinary issues. So they're two players who should be kicking on now. Both have scored goals in the Premier League. Both have played a lot of Premier League minutes. So that will be a bit of a concern. And when you are as thin as we are, certainly in offensive areas, it's not a good sign. Look, I think everyone's been madly impressed with Callum Robinson in the
Yeah,
time
I can't
he's
believe
come
so.
out.
20 minutes in, and we're finally talking about. Oh, jeez, I'd nearly
Yeah,
forgotten how amazing he's been the last two games.
yeah, he's added a different dimension, and that's what I mean. Like he's a guaranteed starter, and he's had well documented COVID issues, missing squads, missing camps, coming in late. So it'd be interesting to see what way he plays it. Does he play a 5-4-1 almost? Does he play a 5-3-2? It'll be a risky one for those who've been watching. Obviously, United that the other day when they played their 5-3-2, you give a lot of time and space to the opposition's fullback. So I don't fancy Joe Cancelo getting on the ball. If he shows up in Dublin, so does he maybe play a 5-4-1 and maybe put Robinson up there and maybe try and put a Brown or a McGrath or an Albeni in one of those forward areas. I'm not sure if he'll start Adamaida. So it's like it's not going to be easy regardless because they've got quality in any areas. And if you do try and, like I said, I think it'll be a risk if he does play 5-3-2 and you don't have support for Doherty or Coleman or whoever's playing in the wing back role. When you just think about that Portugal team, they've just got quality all over, and they've quality in defence, in midfield. And of course, we know with Ronaldo or Jota or Fernandes, but you just hope they don't turn up or they don't want it or it's raining or something. But whatever Kenny plays, I mean, there's going to be difficulties for certain players. But I'd like to see him have that mindset of that if we can turn over the ball and we can catch them cold, that we have pace and power, and you have that in Robinson and maybe an Albane or an Albene or I think Jamie McGrath, if he's fit, I think he has to start because his dead balls are definitely our best option. If Conor Hourihane doesn't play, and I think McGrath's set piece delivery has been very important for Ireland, and I think if Ireland are to go, the likelihood is it's going to be from a dead ball, like we scored in Faro. So I think McGrath, if he is fit, I think that'll be the key. I'd like to see him start, and then maybe a Robinson. I don't know if it's going to be a game for Adamaida, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and you forget like Cancelo, who's obviously like having a fantasy knock it out of the park this season. Pepe, Diaz, Bernardo Silva. Like, I'm just looking at the Ireland team he started against Portugal in the away leg. I wonder, can you name as close to as possible or ballpark of what he started with?
Well, Bazuna was in goal. It was Egan. O'Shea got injured, didn't he? And
Yeah, yeah.
Duffy.
So he
Yeah.
came in for O'Shea, 36
It
minutes.
was Amadama Bele.
Correct.
Not sure the right back was Doherty. Right wing back.
No, Doherty actually started on the left. So
Oh, left
Coleman
and
started on the right.
Coleman.
Yeah. Who do you think you had in midfield?
Cullen and Hendrick.
Spot on, yeah. And the front three?
And then Ida started Connolly because he missed a couple of chances.
Yeah.
And McLean.
McGrath, I thought you'd get one of them
McGrath.
wrong, yeah, but I thought you'd get McGrath, yeah. Because it's funny you said you don't think either would start, but obviously he started this game, but you're thinking maybe Callum Robinson might get that.
Yeah, but just
I think that makes sense, I think, because he was obviously not fit for this game or COVID. I think we might have just lost Sean there for a sec.
Sign.
So, yeah, no, we have you back there, Sean, yeah. So you on that point, sorry to carry on. So Callum Robinson, you think he'll start?
Yeah, Callum Robinson will definitely start. Whether Ida does, I just got Ida. Like if you're not playing minutes at club level, and you have to go up against Diaz and maybe Pepe or whoever Portugal play, would be a worry. And I think Robinson, you let him play up there, and maybe a Robinson with an Albene, and Robinson could kind of have a little bit more of a free role. Like I said, McGrath with a set piece delivery, I think he'll play. But yeah, look, whatever happens, I mean, Ireland are certainly up against it. But I think with Adam Idy, you know what you're going to get, and maybe what he gives at the minute isn't good enough.
Yeah. I think he, like you said, I think he'll go Robinson on that guard. So, would you have a prediction for the game and how it'll go, and maybe over the two games we've become there, Shane, saying Callum Robinson hat trick, 150 to 1, which is probably one of the worst 150 to 1 shots I've seen. But go on, Sean.
That is, yeah. I wonder when was the last
Yeah, go on.
when was the last time someone scored back-to-back hat tricks for Ireland? Probably never.
Keno maybe
Um,
some point.
no, not back-to-back.
No, because you'd never play Andorra and then San Marino back to back with
Yeah,
you. Yeah.
but it's no. Look, I think Portugal will win. It really depends if they're in the mood. I do think you have to think as well. A lot of these players haven't played in a very hostile environment in quite a while. I do think the Aviva will be like that. I really do. I do think it'll be one of those nights where it will be uncomfortable for Portugal. And I think whatever happens, as long as the Portugal players aren't walking out of the Aviva having had the freedom of Dublin like we've seen teams in the past, I think that really is the key, and that Ireland show a lot of grit, and they kind of trust themselves, and there is a lot of experience in that team. That is certainly one of the positives. They aren't naive, really. They are, a lot of battle hardened players like Duffy, and if Coleman plays, and John Egan, and I think that might stand Ireland in good stead. And I think whatever happens, I think the best thing Ireland can do is make sure they give them a right good game. And if it's still a draw after even half time, you can imagine what the atmosphere will be like. And if Ireland do score when it's in the melting pot, I think that's what we're looking for, really. I think that's what we should be hoping for, that we do play a bit of good football, or we do create a couple of chances, but that we make a special night, in the sense that it's the first time, like we said, that the Aviva is going to be full, completely full, and that Ireland make sure it's not an easy night for Portugal. And you just imagine that if it is hostile, how will those Portuguese players react? And maybe we've seen in the past that Ireland just make it that as hostile as possible, and it just stops them from playing. But it's a bit of a long shot. But I think Ireland will score. I just think it'll be 4-1 or 3-1 Portugal.
Jeez. I'm thinking 2-1 Portugal, maybe. Just about. Just looking at that match report from,
well,
like, in the 89 minutes we were beating them. Do you know what I mean? And we weren't even that
yeah.
good back then,
And what I would say is, not to go all Roy Keane on it, but
here we go.
I do hope Ireland. I just hope they smash into Portugal. I think it's just, like I said, just kick them and see what they're like. And if they don't fancy it, then it's your time. But I don't want to see a passive performance, and that has been one of the key, or one of the biggest vulnerabilities, and one of the biggest annoyances from my point of view at times during the Stephen Kenny tenure, is just being Ireland and being nice to play against. Just get stuck in, make sure that you use your physical ability, and make it very hard for Portugal, and the fans will respond to that. I think that the best thing that can happen is, like the old James McLean, clatter into someone, and if the ref gives a yellow card and the fans are roaring at the ref, they're in the game. And sometimes that's the best thing that can happen in a stadium. I think it was Neil Warnock was speaking about this before, that if the fans feel like the ref has had them, they're automatically in the game. And I think that's sometimes what you need at the Aviva. And we've seen in the past when it's been a stale performance, and a sub has come on, like a McGeady or a McLean or a Long, and they've just changed the whole complexion of the game. So I do hope Ireland do that, and like Roy Keane said, just smash into someone. It's a derby game.
The derby game. Before we finish up, my team for the game will be Bazunu in goal. The unstoppable back three sent until Dara Shea comes back in, and then he's a selection headache in Omobamidele, Duffy, and Egan. Duffy, like, we haven't had a chance to talk about him. He's been brilliant. I love seeing Duffy pass out from the back now. Do you know that? And while he still may not be as good as a David Luiz or whatever, he's got a bit more of a presence and a confidence he's playing with. And when you're playing confidently, the passes start sticking a lot more.
Well, what I would say is it's funny, because I've seen a few tweets on this, and isn't it mad how Duffy went up to Scotland where they say, the standard isn't as great. He's going up there, and not for the want of trying, but maybe he was thinking of it too much or he was trying too hard. And I know obviously what happened with his father, and it was COVID and it was difficult. But the way he's come back is a credit, because he could have, like a lot of players have, he could have been resigned to sitting on the bench collecting a wage. This idea of Jack Rodwell or Darren Gibson, who we've seen just collecting wages. But full credit to Shane Duffy, he's fought his way back in, and
yeah.
What I would say is he's repaying a lot of the trust Kenny had in him, because Stephen Kenny kept him in those squads when it might have been easier for him not to, and gave him the armband at times. And I don't think anyone can begrudge Shane Duffy, because he's been a brilliant player for Ireland. And like I said, everything that happened with his father passing away, and you can tell how much it means to him to wear the green jersey. And I'm sure he'll clatter into Ronaldo at some stage.
Oh, that's what the Aviva wants, isn't it?
Do you know what it is, right? I have this idea because
Oh.
I love it. Do you know when, say, Ronaldo gets the ball and he's hitting in towards the south stand, the bigger stand, and he's kind of dribbling, and all I see is Duffy coming across him, kind of shouldering him out of play, putting him on his arse, and the whole of the south stand erupts behind it. I think that's a bit of shithousery that I think we need.
So carrying on with the team, I think he'll go. Well, I want him to go Coleman right wing back, Doherty left wing back. But then I'm not picking James McLean in my team, which I think even though he started him a lot, I don't think he'll play James McLean.
No,
McLean's listed as a defender now, which I think is telling, isn't it?
Yeah, and McLean's
probably play that. Yeah, go on.
McLean's had a good run of club form. He's getting a few goals, so maybe it's a game for McLean to come off the bench. But well, you can't not start Coleman. I think he's our captain, and the only Doherty's been one of Ireland's best players in the last couple of years. So, the last couple of camps. So I think that will be the back five.
Yeah, Josh Cullen, very impressed with him. I just think even his bad games now are like 6s out of 10s. His good games are 7. Really solid in there, and we need him to find a few passes. I think he'll go with Jeff Hendrick. I'm happy enough to have a confident Jeff Hendrick, and whether he played well against the worst opponents of all time, Hendrick's another sort of confidence player. So if he's deluded and think he's playing well, he might actually play well. Then I'm a bit struggling. I think he'll go with CR7, McGrath. If you wanted to be attacking, you'd go McGrath, CR7, and Adamida, but he'll probably go with McGrath, CR7, and then maybe a Jason Knight or an Alan Brown off the right.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think of that.
Yeah, the one thing that by playing McGrath, you do probably need a substitute for pace in there. So I think Knight and Brown are players you can kind of bring off. I do think if he like I said, McGrath's had a couple of injury issues. I think if McGrath does start, and you have Robinson, I'd love to see throw out Benny in there, and because that's where Ireland are going to get a bit of joy down those kind of flanks, and even without Benny and Robinson, you can kind of almost play as two split strikers as well. They can kind of play off the right, or McGrath can play off the left and Benny off the right, so he gives you options up there. Or he can play Adam Ida and maybe play Robinson off the left. But like I said, I would like to see a little bit more pace on that side. And McGrath, I think, is a definite. If he's fit, he's been very good for Ireland. And then, like we mentioned, a set piece. Robinson's a guaranteed starter. So he can go a few options. He can maybe even go McLean up there, because you know what he's going to give you defensively. You can go Knight or Brown. But I'd like to see maybe an Benny in there. Ideally, like if Connolly was playing, you'd have Connolly up there. But obviously we know the problems he's having, and Obafemi.
That's better,
yeah. Yeah, so I'd personally like to see Benny given a run. He's been very impressive when he's come on.
Cool. Any final thoughts? So that's my team. Well, sort of. I'm going to go with McGrath, CR7. Me personally, I'd go Ida. But I can see, you don't want Callum Robinson running back to this goal the whole time. But yeah, any final thoughts on the next two games, Sean, in general? You kind of made your points about Stephen Kenny and the era and can't be judged on these two games. But at the end of the day, we can't be going in with 2 defeats. So I think that's a good place.
Yeah, ultimately he can be judged, but I don't think he will be judged by the FEI is kind of what I'm implying. And I do think the pressure is off him slightly. But like I said, it would be a massive for Stephen Kenny. not only in Ireland, but I do think certainly in and around the British media and that kind of people looking in at Ireland, that the talk with pundits or whatever, that if Ireland could get something, it would just hopefully kickstart the year. But I think we're very much up against the Portugal are a side with players in red hot form. Maybe Fernandes and Ronaldo, but certainly Bernardo Silva and Cancelo, Ruben Diaz, and they're all at the age, a lot of them, where they want to kind of mold into a championship winning side, and they've got arguably one of the greatest players of all time at spearheading. So we'll be up against it, but I do hope that Ireland bring and make it a competitive game and a physical game, and you never know what happens. But I don't know who's reffing, but God, if it's anything like that game in Portugal, we could be in a bit of trouble.
I forgot all about that ref. Yeah. And obviously, given
there's an interesting one.
Look, we'll leave it there. My thanks to you, Sean. At Tackling Sports social media, do keep up to date. Do also remember the Ireland-Portugal game is this Thursday. I've seen a few people on Twitter only realising that, and I'm sure there's someone in the country that will be sitting down, flicking the channels and realise it's on. It's not next Thursday, given these international windows. So yeah, my thanks to Sean.
Cheers, Dan.
We'll be back on Monday night, back on the normal time, to review both the Ireland games there in the Luxembourg game and the Portugal game. Best of luck to Stephen Kenny's side, and enjoy the rest of the week and the weekend, and we'll chat to you later.